So to start the day off, I have to admit that I didn't grow up with the Crash series of games. I played them, sure, and I had a few of those PS1 demo discs lying around, so I got to try a few levels at random, but I didn't own any of the games and only really played them at any real length when I was grown up. So a lot of today's review is going to be coming from a place of first impressions, and based exclusively on the Crash N Sane Trilogy remasters and played on PC. Now, lucky for me, I have some friends in the Tomodachi Bros who have actually played these games beforehand, and their insight in writing the script is and was truly invaluable. So I asked my good buddy Clockwork to join me here as we take a closer look at the first 3 Crash Bandicoot games. Let's check it out. Greetings everyone, this is the Hipster Snek, and today joining me is Clockwork. Introduce yourself, guy.
Thank you, Mr. Snek, for having me back. For those who don't know, I am Clockwork Fiction. I will hopefully be starting up on Twitch here soon. You can catch me on twitch.tv/clockworkfiction.
And today, we'll be having a look at the Crash N Sane Trilogy, released on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch across 2017 and 2018. It serves as an anthology title, remastering and bundling the first 3 Crash Bandicoot games all in one convenient package, and ensuring most gamers will never have the faintest idea what an actual Bandicoot is, much the same as Knuckles the Echidna made it so no one knows what the heck he is either.
A Bandicoot in the real world is a small marsupial of the order of Palamelomorphia. Here's a big word for the day. There's a collection of more than 20 medium-sized omnivore critters native to Australia and New Guinea. At full size, it can be around a foot to 30 inches in length and weigh anywhere between half a pound to 3.5 pounds. And they do, in fact, have strong hind legs, allowing them to jump. I am not so confident about spinning in circles and punching people, but maybe they never felt the need to do before now.
And Crash certainly has his work cut out for him, as these games canonically happen basically one right after the next, with only a year-long time skip happening between 1 and 2 to explain why Pamela Anderson the Bandicoot...
That's Tana.
That's what I said. Anyway, the time skip is so Pamela Anderson the Bandicoot can be written out of the story. And speaking of the story, the first game opens with Dr. Neo Cortex, a mad scientist who's using the wildlife of the world for his own nefarious ends by way of induced evolution caused by the Cortex Vortex, attempting global domination with his newfound army of super animals. He attempts to use Crash, which spectacularly fails, so the Bandicoot is ejected and ends up at the far end of a secluded fictional archipelago some 300 miles west of Tasmania, the Wampa Islands. Aided by guardian spirit Aku Aku, a tiki-masked creature, Crash sets about going to save Pam and defeat Cortex before he can put his mad ambitions into motion.
And in Crash 2, Cortex plummets from his fortress from the first game, allowing him a close encounter with a type of crystal which he immediately begins formulating plans for. A year and a new assistant named Jin, Cortex abducts Crash to a new hub world area and tricks Crash into cooperating with his plans to get the crystals. Not that tricking someone with Crash's intelligence is particularly amazing as feats go, but we learn Cortex's old lackey, Nitrous Brio, is working to usurp him by collecting certain types of gems to power his own plot. Then in Crash 3, the story picks up straight away with Cortex's plans from the last game, accidentally unearthing Uka Uka, another tiki mask-like spirit entity, who aids Cortex in his plans of traveling through time to find crystals wherever they may be. Aku Aku warns Crash that his sister Coco, oh yeah, Coco's in this game now, and advises them that Cortex and Uka Uka need to be stopped or else the world will be in great peril.
And with the story recap done, we can do a much shorter graphical discussion because the remake has all 3 games running on the same engine, so explaining this will be much simpler. For starters, it looks solid. You can see the details on Crash and Coco's fur, for example. The enemies are all large and colorful, and the camera generally is pointed in the way you need to go, except when it isn't and the game becomes borderline unplayable. More on that in a second. The overall design is really well done. You get the sense of color and design in everything you see. Like, you learn very quickly that red flytrap plants are triggered once you step on them, whereas the green ones fire off on a timer. It's all very well constructed.
And in terms of audio, it's a treat. The music ranges from rock and roll boss encounters, poppy stage themes, up-tempo songs for rushing levels. It all feels like the music is always complementing what's on screen. And the sound effects are cartoony and charming. Bouncing on enemies and sending them flying sounds like what you expect a cartoon animal to sound like when, well, sent flying like a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And the voice cast is really selling it. Cortex sounds delightfully hammy, as he should, and tends to steal the show when on screen in particular. Not to say anyone else is inferior, they all do a fantastic job.
Whoa!
Come on, man, really? That wasn't even in the actual Crash games.
Yeah, I know, but dated memes are my thing. Let me have this. Anyway, the core gameplay between Crash titles remains consistent between each, both for good and for ill. While Crash would get a slide and belly flop ability in later games, in Game 1 it was just jumping and spinning. The spin was actually a pretty brilliant decision given its circular nature, meaning Crash can attack in all directions all at once in a 3D space. Crash's arms aren't all that long, but it also means you don't need to be super precise, which in this game is a small but welcome mercy. The game is primarily an action platformer, with most levels having the camera following at Crash or Coco's backs. Oh yeah, Coco is made playable in most of the game, even where she wasn't before, but they both handle precisely the same way, including Coco doing her brother's goofy dance for clearing a level 100%. However, the camera itself lends itself to some problems all their own. For starters, the angle it chooses to move is not always the optimal one, leading to situations where I misjudge my jumps because I was under the mistaken impression of just how big the jump was supposed to be. And it's infinitely worse during the game's infamous chase sequences where the camera is where you're supposed to run towards. Do you know why I never go fast in 2D Sonic the Hedgehog games? Because I can't see what's in front of me. And Crash and Coco are one-hit wonders, unless a level happens to give you an Aku Aku for an additional hit or two. It makes most stages, but particularly the chase sequences, painfully trial by error, in the way of we didn't want our games to be beaten in a weekend rental kind of sense. Now, they try to counter this by showering you with lives and making continuing relatively painless, but I can't shake it. The first game of the trilogy in particular feels like an amateurish rage game, especially when the physics can be very inconsistent. Look, there's this level fairly early in the game with slanted platforms covered in moss, and the moss makes you move if you sit idle on it. You can negate this by hopping up and down to limit how much it moves you, but every now and then, the momentum will randomly carry over into your jump and you'll move anyway, in a level strewn with spike rods and flamethrowers. And the platforming does not feel precise at all. You're either completely on or you fall to your death with very little leniency, and this can get infuriating real quick.
Granted, but mine the later games typically avoid this kind of gameplay. The difficulty tends towards being much more even-handed, Aku Aku pickups being a bit more common and levels generally being more fair, except, you know, the underwater levels, and the jetpack levels, and the chase levels are still pretty unforgiving. But in the name of fairness, there are actually a small cross-section of these games. Even the autorunner levels aren't all that bad. Sure, the camera isn't necessarily your friend, but it isn't actively trying to kill you either. At least not in the strictest sense. And the pseudo 2D bits tend to be pretty balanced overall. That said, the game also uses an adaptive difficulty system, where if you die a lot on the same boss fight or checkpoint, you'll be granted additional power-ups, chiefly in the form of additional hits by the way of Aku Aku. So even if you're struggling, the game has ways to give you a leg up, provided of course you're not dying to platforming or other instant death obstacles. Oops, but hey, the game gives you lots of extra lives, and you can replay levels with easy access power-ups to help you with that. And the Wumpa Fruit, these peaches you're seeing all over the place, now you extra lives for every 100 you get. And, as of the remake, you can save at any time, and it gives you much easier criteria for getting gems. You just need to clear all the boxes out of every stage, including bonus areas, and you get a gem. Most of them are clear gems, which have no mechanical effect, but some colored gems unlock things like platforms that wouldn't appear in some stages normally, broadening your ability to search other levels.
You gotta love how Crash is literally beaten over the head with the boxes he missed in the first game. That's kinda harsh. These later games don't do that.
I heard that's not in the Japanese version. Cultural differences and whatnot.
But overall, my endless list of whining complaints aside, the games are charming. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon reborn right out of the mid-90s, which is a fitting way to view Crash as a whole. Truth is simply that if you weren't a fan of his outings back in the day, the remake isn't going to be for you. But if you did, it'll probably be everything you want and more. It's still the same frenetic and straightforward kind of action game that fans have come to expect. As for me, on the whole, I liked it. There's a lot that could be polished and improved upon, and hey, maybe I'll revisit this franchise in the future to see if they learned. But we'll see.
Overall, the new Crash Trilogy has brought me a lot of nostalgic memories, and I recommend to anyone new and old to give it a try. This is Clockwork Fiction. Have a great day.
And special thanks to Clockwork for joining me today as we had a look at this suite, both new and old all in one. If you liked today's episode, hit the like button so I know. Leave a comment down below. Are you on board with Clockwork when these games first debuted? Or are you more in the same boat as me and came late to the Crash games? I'd be curious to know. And for more like this, 5 days a week, hit the subscribe and bell icon so you'll never miss anything as it comes. There's always more to come, including obscure reviews, NDX, Snek Tech, and Season 2 of the Tomodachi Bros podcast, where Clockwork and my other buddies join me to review stuff in an unscripted, free-form format. More coming soon, and I will see you there.